Welcome everyone to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting, Monday, April 24th, 5:30 p.m. Call to order. We will now call the meeting to order. The time is 5:30 p.m. We will now proceed with item number 2, approval of the agenda. That the agenda for the Planning Advisory Committee meeting of April 24th, 2023 be approved as presented. May I have a mover? Leanne, and a seconder? Jason, all in favor? Carried. Are there any declarations of interest tonight? No, seeing none. Item 4 is a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting held on January 26, 2023. I have a recommendation that the Planning Advisory Committee minutes dated January 26, 2023 be accepted as presented. Can I have a mover? Leanne, and a seconder? All in favor?
James. You are 50 meters from your destination on the right.
Is there any discussion on the minutes? All in favor, motion carried. We will now move into the public meeting portion of this evening's meeting. Item 5.1 is staff report 02-2023, Community Improvement Plan Amendment Approval. Our Economic Development Officer, Dana Valentine, will speak to this portion of the meeting. Dana?
Thank you, Chair Young. Through you to the committee. So we have before you tonight our amended community improvement plan. Just to give you a little bit of context, well, the recommendation before you tonight is that the Planning Advisory Committee approve the proposed community improvement plan. So this stems from some work that began under the previous term of council. It's the community improvement plan, as I'm sure many of you are familiar, based on approval of previous applications, is a program that provides some financial incentives designed to assist with the improvement, rehabilitation of properties throughout the community under several different key areas. And every 5 years or so, the community improvement plan should be reviewed and amended if required. So we've gone through that process, which began last year. The plan was presented to the previous council and planning advisory committee and was approved in principle. And over the past several months, staff have been now working to actually develop the final plan along with all of the supporting documentation. And that's what we're bringing here before the committee for approval tonight. So I think what I'll just do is take you through kind of a comparison of the previous plan and the new plan, which will identify some of the changes that we're recommending tonight. So we have 4 existing areas of funding that we can provide under the CIP, and we are proposing a 5th one as part of tonight's plan that's coming before you. So area 1 is an existing area. That's the downtown and Riverwalk district area. And this area provides financing, grants, non-repayable grants, and 0% interest loans, as well as some tax incentives. So in the previous program, there was $5,000 available in a non-repayable grant for facade improvements. So that would be any improvements to the exterior of the property, anything from paint to architectural detail improvements, cornices, things of that nature. Anything that's essentially visible to the naked eye. And then we had a signage component, which provided up to $1,000 in non-repayable grant, and then accessibility, which was up to $5,000. And interior commercial, which was up to $3,000, and then we had interior residential up to $2,000. So under the new program, we're recommending that the entire grant be increased to $22,000. We're recommending actually combining the grant incentives under one category. Found under the previous past few years of implementing the program that it was somewhat restrictive, especially when you're looking at existing costs for improvements. For example, if a business owner was looking at making signage improvements, $1,000 really does not go that far when it comes to purchasing a new sign, especially if you're looking at lighting as part of that, which is another requirement that we're looking to implement under this new program. So it was really pretty restrictive. Same with the facade, $5,000 really does not go a long way towards facade improvements. Now, what we provide is a 50% matching funding. So that would require, if we were providing $5,000, the property owner would have to spend $10,000. So you can, just based on what we've seen to date, you can easily exceed that amount when it comes to making these type of improvements. So we thought a better approach might be to combine what's available under one incentive amount. So we're recommending increasing that amount to $22,000. And previously it was sitting at $15,500. So we are looking at about a $5,000 increase to the available non-repayable incentives through that program, as well as some increases to the loan category and the building permit grant. There's a building permit grant under this incentive that previously provided up to $500 in a non-repayable grant to cover the cost of permit fees. Again, we were finding that was, the actual cost of permits can be quite extensive. So it really wasn't, for smaller projects, it was fine, but for some of those bigger projects that we're really trying to encourage property owners to undertake, it really wasn't providing that much. So we're recommending a new approach to this incentive, which would be up to $1,000 or 10% of the building permit fee, whichever is higher. And then on to the next category, we have the loan program, which previously was up to $20,000 repayable over a period of 5 years, 0% interest, and repayments started 1 year after the completion of the project. So that would give the property owner or business owner some time to hopefully start to generating some revenues before they had to pay that loan back. Under the new program, we're recommending that amount increase up to $100,000, not to exceed 50% of the project value. And then that would become repayable under a new range of 5 to 8 years, depending on the loan amount. Because repaying $100,000 in 5 years could be pretty limiting. So we certainly wanted to provide a broader repayment period for those that are going to take advantage of the full loan amount. So that essentially takes you through the recommended changes. We also have the property tax increment program, and that is a tax increment grant that kicks in after completion of improvements once the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation completes a reassessment. So with every building permit, MPAC, the abbreviation for Property Assessment Corporation, will go in and reassess a property. So we generally see a taxation increase following those improvements, which can be a bit prohibitive to potential property owners that are considering that, because they know that it's also going to come with this potentially significant tax increase. So that's what this grant program is really meant to address. And so it offsets that tax increase for a period of 5 years on a sliding scale, starting at 100% and then decreasing by 20% each year. And there's no change to that program. And then there's just a few other changes, more like housekeeping changes that we've identified to the program, which would be adopting a new definition to just better summarize the purpose and intent of that Area 1, extending the eligible area of Edward Street all the way up to Wood Street, whereas previously it stopped at Henry Street, and then extending the east and west boundaries to, just the west boundaries to Sophia Street. It still ends on the east at East Street, but it had previously ended at St. Lawrence Street. So we would be taking it another 2 blocks to the west. And that really captures some existing commercial properties that were previously ineligible for the funding. And this new area also aligns with the new proposed downtown commercial core that is coming out through the new official plan that we hope to be adopted by Municipal Affairs and Housing in coming weeks. And then we also added new sign and lighting design guidelines with a checklist, which is included as part of this package for the committee to review, as well as looked at the facade design guidelines and made some subtle adjustments to them. just again, to kind of bring this into more of a current situation, the design guidelines were developed in 2005. So there's been a lot of things that have changed in regards to standards for those guidelines, and we really just wanted to bring them into the current period and maintain some consistency with comparable municipalities as well. That's something that's also very important to the program. And then we made some adjustments to how we would issue the loan funds, issuing them as installments versus lump sum payments, just so we're staying on top of the expenses and ensuring that proper and eligible expenses are being incurred for those loan funds. Also allowing for multiple facade applications to be submitted for properties in cases where they're situated on corner lots in high traffic areas. So that's where both sides of the property are visible. A good example would be TD Bank, Bobby's, O'Heafey's, Royal Bank, those type of properties, because they are so highly visible from multiple vantage points. And then we also are recommending extending the project completion deadline from 12 to 24 months. As well, we found something that was quite limiting under the previous program was the fact that you could only receive funding once for property. So when it comes to business improvements, there's certainly, as time goes by, improvements get tired, they need a refreshing. There's an argument for there to be funding, in our opinion, available on more of an incremental basis, so that as business owners are changing and growing and improving, they can continue to make those upgrades to their properties to maintain relevance. And then we also have the possibility of turnover. There's certainly those cases where businesses have received funding. Unfortunately, they may close, a new business will come in, and under the previous program, that new business wouldn't have been eligible to apply for any funding. So we found that to be quite limiting as well, and we're recommending that be adjusted to allow for those businesses to receive funding. So we've suggested a new terms of no less than 5 years following the receipt of previous CIP funding. You can then apply again, or to support subsequent renovations completed no less than 36 months after previously funded renovations. So an example of that would be if a property owner made some improvements to, say, a portion of their interior and then decided they wanted to maybe install a new kitchen in another area of the building that hadn't been previously supported through the program. If 36 months has passed, they would then be eligible to reapply to fund a new aspect of that property that hadn't been previously funded. So again, we're being very cognizant of not allowing property owners or businesses to double dip, because that really isn't the intent of the program. And then another new condition that we're recommending is a grant repayment requirement under the following conditions: if the project isn't completed within 24 months of approval, or if the property sells and changes use within 24 months of approval. That was another critical piece as well. We want to be funding businesses, especially that have some longevity and are going to stay. The purpose of the program isn't to fund businesses that in 6 months are going to be closed. It's really to hopefully create, to use it as a business retention and development tool. So that would give us an ability to claw those funds back if that business did close within 24 months of approval, or the property sells or changes use. Changes use is an important one as well, because there is a potential in some areas of the downtown core, the way our zoning bylaw currently sits, that a property could be converted from commercial to residential. And we would absolutely want to see those funds returned to the municipality if that happened, because it no longer has that commercial component. So that takes us into area 2. Happy to entertain any questions section by section, if there's any burning questions, or answer everything at the end, whatever. I'm not sure what way you wanted to approach it, Chair Young.
Does the committee have a preference?
Young?
At the end is fine.
Okay. So area 2, this takes us into employment lands. So there's a lot of repetition throughout this, so this section will be a bit more condensed. Again, we're recommending combining that grant incentive. So under this category, we previously had accessibility, interior, commercial for the actual grants, and we're recommending a new area titled the Streetscape Grant. So that would provide funding for landscaping, pedestrian amenities, and ground signage. So the employment lands, just to highlight that area, that's really concentrated in more of the area north of the tracks. So previously, that area was really focused on industrial businesses only. So we're also recommending under this new one that it actually be open to the entire commercial district versus just industrial, because there's quite a few businesses that would be that would warrant funding support in that area that were previously ineligible if they weren't industrial zoned. So this would open it up to a variety of commercial businesses, a lot of the independent businesses that previously weren't captured under the downtown core, which was something that was really important to us as well, because we've got a very diverse mix of businesses that are located in all zones of the community. So we felt it was important to provide some support to those businesses, yet not at the same level as the downtown, because the downtown is an area that we have identified as being really that core commercial district that we're trying to drive those more independent businesses to, that would benefit most from the type of funding that we're providing. So we're recommending, previously there was $6,000 available under this program through accessibility and the interior commercial. And we're recommending increasing that to $13,000, which would also take in the new streetscape grant category. And then for the building permit application, we're recommending identical amendments as you had under the previous category. Previously it was 5,000. We're recommending increasing that to 1,000 or 10% of the building permit fee, whichever is higher. Same with the loan program. It was previously $20,000. We're recommending that increase to 100,000, repayable over 5 to 8 years at 0%. And then the property tax increment, again, exact same amendment recommended, or no amendment, sorry, recommended for this one. It's the same terms as the downtown one. So tax increment starting at 100% over 5 years to offset the tax increase. And again, for under the housekeeping or administrative side, we're recommending a lot of similar improvements. I'd already addressed the one, increasing the area to cover any property that has an industrial and or commercial use. And having the applicant also must be able to demonstrate that the project will have a direct result of permanently increasing employment. We really wanted to retain that component as part of this, because the type of businesses that it would really be geared towards are those larger scale multi-employee businesses where it makes sense. If they're making those improvements, it's likely going to come with some employees and job creation as part of that. And we really just wanted to encourage that as part of any funding that we're providing to those employers. And then again, issuing loan funds as installment versus lump sum payments, just so we can be more cognizant of payments being issued that are aligned with inspections and eligible expenses, and extending the project completion deadline again from 12 to 24 months. And the same recommendations for permitting multiple funding applications similar to the downtown area. And again, the new grant repayment requirement under the 24 months if it isn't completed or if the property sells or changes use. And now that takes me into category area 3, which is the heritage conservation area. So this area had previously provided funding for engineering and or architectural reports. So that's for heritage designated or properties deemed to have heritage significance. Those are the properties that are eligible for this funding incentive. So that covers the entire town. The eligibility factor is the heritage designation, not necessarily the location of the property. So we would provide up to $2,000 previously for engineering and or architectural reports, up to $3,000 for facade improvements, at $2,000 for accessibility, and $2,000 for interior improvements. So we aren't recommending any changes under this one, aside from combining that total grant incentive to just open it up a little bit more so it isn't so restrictive if they have improvements that are going to exceed the available funding under the previous categories. Same recommended amendments to the building permit fee incentive. And then we're also recommending, this is a new one, there was no loan available previously under the heritage category. So we are recommending the addition of the loan to this category. Same loan as previously discussed, up to $100,000, repayable over 5 to 8 years, 0% interest. And we have encountered quite a few requests to date from heritage property owners that are looking to make those significant improvements. And, you know, as you'll see, when you look at what's available, the 9,000, again, it's pretty limiting, especially if you're getting into heritage property improvements, because there's so much more that goes along with that, and a completely different set of standards that needs to be adhered to. So we thought it would be a nice addition to look at adding the loan to this category. And again, a lot of the same changes, extending the project deadline from 12 to 24 months, incorporating the grant repayment requirement, issuing the loan funds as installment versus lump sum. And then that brings me into area 4, which is the brownfields, another existing category. And this area is intended specifically for properties located anywhere in the community that have either been confirmed to or have a speculated possibility of being contaminated. Happy to provide some language after the meeting on brownfield contaminated lands. If anyone's looking for definitions, we're more than happy to provide that. But, you know, an example of a brownfield property could be a former gas station that had been closed and decommissioned, pumps removed, but maybe there's some contamination in the ground. Another good example of a brownfield property would be a former industrial site, either in recent years or back to early days when there were certain industries operating that could have led to potential contamination that would then have to be remediated to be able to accommodate new development, especially residential development. That's one of the areas or types of development that cannot move forward on lands that have not been remediated or don't have a clear record of site condition. So that's really what this program is trying to do, is hopefully encourage the remediation of some of these brownfield properties so that we can get them developed and functioning once again and contributing to the local economy versus sitting there being these unutilized properties that create these, eyesores essentially throughout the community. So that's really what this program is intended for. There's no changes recommended to the grants aside from, again, the combination of the two. So under this program, we have provided up to $5,000 in a grant for the study phase, the phase 1 environmental site assessment, and up to $10,000 for phase 2 environmental site assessment. Phase 1 site assessment generally goes through and speculates whether a property is contaminated based on historic uses. The phase 2 actually goes in, digs the test holes, and verifies that yes, that property is contaminated or not, and exactly where that contamination resides and what type of contaminants you are going to find within those lands. So it gives a good indication of what type of a remediation plan now needs to be developed for that property. So that's what this program provides for, and we provide up to $15,000. Again, everything with the grants is matching, just to remind you. So the property owner or business owner has to provide 50% in matching funding. And then again, same amendments recommended to the building permit incentive, up to $1,000 or 10% of the building permit fee. And then there's another tax incentive under this program, which is called the Property Tax Cancellation Program. So there's no change recommended to this program. This is an existing incentive. And it essentially provides for the cancellation of taxes while the property is being rehabilitated. Because at that current time, the property is useless, so to speak, cannot be occupied or utilized for anything. So during that rehabilitation remediation period, the municipality will provide for the cancellation of taxes for up to a period of 3 years. And again, that also encourages the property owner to remediate as soon as possible so that they can qualify for that tax cancellation. And then we also offer the property tax increment program under this category. This one is a bit different. It's offered for 4 years versus 5 years. So it starts at 100% and decreases by 25% a year for 4 years. And then very similar changes to some of the other housekeeping items, except for with the brownfield, we're recommending increasing the project completion deadline from 12 to 36 months versus 24, because that remediation period can take a significant amount of time. And then we would have a grant repayment requirement under if the project isn't completed within 36 months, or again, if it sells or changes use. And now to bring you to Area 5, this is the new incentive that we're recommending, which is geared towards large-scale residential developments with an affordable housing component. So we're recommending 2 incentives under this program. The first would be the building permit fee, the same as the other ones, so it would be up to $1,000 or 10%, whichever is higher. And then we're also recommending the property tax increment program be approved for this category, which would provide tax increment grant, a varying percentage. Under this area, it would start at 50% versus 100% and decrease by 10% each year. Only because the sheer scale of the development could result in a very significant increment. So we're really just trying to keep that something that the municipality can maintain and doesn't put us in a difficult situation. And then some of the key eligibility factors associated with this incentive is the minimum project size would have to be $5 million. So this is not intended for someone to come in and build an executive home on the waterfront. That is not the purpose of this program. The purpose is to encourage multi-unit residential developments, because I think everyone can recognize right now we are certainly in a housing crisis, and incentives like this I think could go a long way to encouraging developers to look at Prescott. And another eligibility requirement for this is that at least 10% of the residential units would have to meet the definition of affordable housing and be at a minimum of 1 unit. And we've provided for the definition of affordable housing here as part of your staff report here. But essentially, it's that no one pays more than 30% of their gross annual income on housing. So that would essentially be the definition of affordable for that component. And then just general housekeeping changes. We are recommending the addition of a definition section, the amalgamation of the grant funds, which I addressed as part of the previous areas. Clarification that loan funds cannot be used to support the matching portion of grant funds. This has come up in the past, not that it's happened, but it's just that those questions get asked. So we just want to try and get ahead of some of these areas or oversights that maybe weren't addressed under the previous program. One of them being this, that a property owner or tenant can't use their loan funds to cover the portion of, say, the facade grant, their matching component. It's meant to be a separate program that should be used for improvements above and beyond those that are covered by the grant program. That's the real intent of the loan. And to cover those expenses that in some cases are eligible under the grant program. And then applications must include a detailed plan for use of funds for loans and grants. It was just again, a gap we found in the previous application. that it really didn't require that delineation. So we felt that was an important piece to this. And clarifying again that only one stream can be applied for per property. For example, if there's a downtown property that also happens to have heritage designation, you have to essentially choose one over the other. You can't apply for incentives under both. And the design guidelines and sign guidelines, we've also included in this package. These are a pretty critical component of the community improvement plan, because the real intent of this plan is to hopefully achieve an elevated level of design in the downtown. And that's really what we're trying to do through these grants and programs, is to provide a bit more of an incentive or an encouragement for property owners to really elevate what they're doing, put some investment into those properties, because it contributes to the overall appeal and placemaking ability of the downtown itself. It brings more residents, more businesses, more visitors, and at the end of the day, we all win. So that's really what we're trying to encourage, is striving for, a higher aesthetic. And that's what we've done with these new sign guidelines, especially. The design guidelines were developed in 2005. So we took a really good look at those, looked at comparable municipalities, and recommended some subtle changes to the design guidelines. But for the most part, they were really well done when they were created. They were based on, universally accepted standards and guidelines, such as the National Trust for Historic Preservation, successful municipalities that have been implementing these guidelines for many years. So they really were well done. So there's not a significant amount of amendments to those. What I would focus my attention on would be the sign guidelines. We pulled them out of the design guidelines because we found they were a bit limited in scope, and we really wanted them to align better with the sign bylaw that was adopted a couple of years ago, as well as take them to the next level, because if you're receiving incentive funding, we do feel that there's an argument for a higher standard to be set by the municipality. So that's what you'll see with those sign guidelines. Spent a lot of time researching comparable municipalities, a lot of, accepted, universally accepted standards that have been used by many for years as best case practices. And I think what you have before you is a very comprehensive guideline that is really going to take us, not only through the next few years, but through the next decade or two, when it comes to the downtown design and what we're striving to achieve. So it's something I personally am very proud of, and I hope the committee would see fit to approve the CIP and the supporting documentation tonight. We've put a lot of work and review into it as staff, and we spent a lot of time consulting the recipients. To us, that was the most important piece, is the property owners and the businesses. A lot of these changes really come from those recipients of the program and the feedback that they've provided to date, as well as the previous reviews that have been completed by the Planning Advisory Committee and councils. So we've received a lot of great feedback through those reviews as well that we incorporated. So I think we're at a place now where we're ready to bring it forth for hopefully final approval. And I'll just quickly, if I can, pass it over to Matthew to maybe cover the financial aspect of what this program means.
Thank you very much. And so what you have before you this evening is our CIP program. We eliminated the vacancy rebate several years ago and have been contributing $25,000 per year to the Community Improvement Plan reserve. With this new implementation of the plan and the enhancements in it, we're projecting that we're going to see a little bit of a mini boom in the number of applications. And with that, we're suggesting reallocating $100,000 from our fiscal policy reserve to the CIP to be able to support this program. That's something that we've done in the past to be able to support it. And certainly if we find that that is still not enough to be able to support the plan, then we would go back to council and request additional funds to be able to support that. Because this is obviously one of our major economic development strategic plan initiatives, as well as our strategic plan initiatives and our new official plan goals and objectives. So really, that's what you have before you this evening. The tax incentive doesn't go against the reserve, nor do the loan funds. It just, when we loan the money out, it becomes a receivable. As it's repaid, it comes back into the town's coffers. And so really the only part that does go against the reserve is the grant funds that are part of each of those areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Dana. That was a really comprehensive report. Are there any questions from the committee?
Yes, directed towards Matthew. Just a general question about the grant funding. Is it going to be forgivable? I do realize about the, if you sell the property or changes use, you can ask for it back. It's probably not mandatory, but it's an option that the town has the right of. Are you going to be also securing that as well? So there'd be like a registered loan or registered security against the property?
So in terms of the grant funds, we only pay those out after the amounts are incurred. And so we don't have too much of a concern as to the ability to claw those back. In terms of the loan, that actually goes against the property, registered against the property, and then becomes payable if it changes hands in the same way that any outstanding property taxes are paid. So we do have a fairly extensive loan agreement that we sign with each applicant and each recipient. And so that it clearly defines that in there.
One of the concerns with the grant that you can still claw it back if you wish, and if it's not secured against the property,
and so
it's hard to grab it back.
That's a new aspect of this particular plan versus the old one, and it will mirror this very similar language as we have in the loan agreement so that it's registered.
Thank you.
Does anyone else?
Yes, I have a couple of questions I would believe be for Dana. First question, as far as in general, the application of the work being performed. In order to get the grant money, is this going to have to be work performed by professionals with proper invoicing, or is this going to be, I'm a building owner and I'm going to paint my building and I'm going to submit a request for $5,000 because that's what I think my time is worth. And that's why I'm kind of curious on that aspect of it.
So that's another key component of it is we ensure that we can cover the cost of labor, but we will not cover the cost of business or property owner labor. So to your point, an individual couldn't decide, I'm going to go and paint my property and charge my time out at this rate and the town is going to reimburse me. No. For any direct labor that we cover, we have to receive actual pay stubs for those employees.
Okay.
And for any materials, we certainly will provide that. A property owner or a tenant does not have to use a contractor because we certainly recognize there's a lot of work that can be done on your own. Mm-hmm. You just need funding to buy the materials. So that's where we would provide, we would just require proof of payment for any materials that needed to be purchased, or if they do decide to go the contractor route, proof of invoice and proof of payment, not just proof of expense, but we do require proof of payment for everything.
Okay, and my next question is as far as the work being performed or materials supplied, is there going to be any kind of push towards, I don't know if you're familiar with lead construction, is there going to be any kind of push towards lead contracting as far as trying to, to the best of their ability for the scope of the work, using local contractors, say within, a 50 or 100 kilometer radius, as well as suppliers? Because, it'd be, not to say that I don't want work going to Ottawa, but if there's a guy, Brockville or Prescott or Kemptville that's capable of doing the work, I'd rather see it local and same with the materials than being farmed out to, Kingston, Ottawa, and the bigger municipalities.
So we don't have a requirement per se, But we do encourage all vendors to use local suppliers. We also have, now we can't recommend one vendor over another, but when asked, you know, a lot of businesses are new to this. You know, a lot of them have never had to deal with signage and things of that nature before. So that's where we can comfortably at least recommend a list of, here's some local companies that you may want to consider. You know, we always recommend using local suppliers. Again, there could be relationships that property owners, businesses have with suppliers outside of our community, and that's fine as well. And in our own budgeting, and you know, we a lot of times, you know, price tends to have it definitely dictates who we're able to use. And as much as we all want to use and shop locally, we also have to be cognizant of our own bottom line, right? So certainly something that we encourage but not require.
Any other questions? Ann?
No.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to congratulate Dana on this beautiful report. It is very thorough. I do like the increases in certain areas. And I was on the committee last term, and I really enjoyed it and gave my feedback regarding some changes. And it is good to reach out to the applicants that have tried the program to find out what is working and what is not working. And, you know, we implemented those into this new policy. So this is great. And like I said before, it's great that we invest our own municipal money to help businesses in our own town each and every time.
If I can, through you, Chair Young. That's something I never spoke to at all, because I have tried to keep this condensed. I know we have a very heavy agenda, but I can't even begin to stress that the positive impact that this has had on the downtown. If you look at the downtown from when I started in 2018 to now, I was just looking over pictures, doing like a before and after there the other day. It's amazing to see over that period of time, the positive change that has happened, the businesses that have come in and opened and survived despite a pandemic too. And I will say the majority of those businesses are the ones who have tapped into, taken advantage of this program. And it's leveraged over $10 million of investment just in the past 10 years alone. And that's based on what I believe $1 million investment, I think, from the municipality between loans and grants. So that speaks volumes, I think, as to the benefit and the impact this program has seen to date.
I had a couple questions. On Area 1 with the downtown, just wondering about the sublimit for interior renovations. Just because we're trying to encourage residential downtown now, that it may be something to consider, you know, removing that $2,000 sublimit on the residential portion of the building.
Yeah, I think your point is really well taken, especially right now. Previously, I think we're always, I guess the thought process behind that is that we're really trying to encourage commercial and always having that commercial component. But there is that requirement, is having that commercial component as part of any work that's done. So that would potentially offset that. So, you know, I personally don't see any reason why we couldn't eliminate it, as long as we're stressing that it still needs to have that commercial component, because that would ensure that the entirety of those funds couldn't be used for residential, even if we are capping it. Matthew, I know you had some thoughts of as well too.
I completely agree. And I think what we were trying to do is make sure that we weren't going to end up with residential only projects, but there being a commercial component as well. So we did take a look, and there is a requirement to have commercial component to your application. So as long as we ensure that we're following that, then we're more than happy to remove that sublimit.
Okay, and just one other thing, as a business owner myself, the wording that you need 3 quotes to qualify sometimes that 3 quotes is a barrier for sure. It's like, maybe people don't return your calls or you're like, oh, 3 quotes, I'm not gonna bother. So just wondering if we could take a look at the requirement for 3 quotes.
And I will say in the past, we've been very flexible in that regard. I don't think there's been a project to date that we've actually held someone to providing 3 quotes. It's really more to demonstrate the intent. If a business owner or property owner can say, look, I've done my due diligence. I've called 6 different contractors and I've only been able to get a quote from one. That's something that we certainly are going to be willing to make an exception for and have in the past, because we're not trying to make this a deterrent. But I do think even changing the language, because I've talked to some potential applicants that have said, honestly, I hesitated to apply because of the 3 quote requirement. So maybe there's that potential that there's people sitting in the wings not even applying because they see that requirement. They're like, oh no, I can't. That's just so onerous, right? To have to go through. And we also recognize a lot of times they're using local contractors and suppliers, and we don't want to create a constant issue for suppliers that are getting hit with quote requests when they know maybe 2 out of 10 are actually going to result in work for their business. So I understand that as a contractor, you can only entertain so many quotes. But it has been, I think, a deterrent in the past. So I would think, I would say that would be something that we could certainly look at, maybe 2.
If I may make a suggestion, I'd even suggest 1 or more. A smart businessman's going to get 2 or 3 anyways.
Yeah.
So, and if they are going to be, 1 or more, again, it's about the deterrent.
Yeah.
So just the scaring off with the language. And then maybe adding a small component that if there's any way the town can provide assistance, if they're a new small business coming to the area, we actually have a communique person within our town that can assist you in any direction with regards to filling out the forms, application process, because I think sometimes there could be a hardworking, awesome entrepreneur out there, but he's got limited English skills or limited, management skills that maybe the town could offer a little bit of assistance in that category.
And it's funny you mentioned that. I'm meeting with a business owner this week to sit down and assist them with completing the application. One of our new downtown businesses who, just as you referenced, has some language barriers. And just that ability of be that much easier so we definitely provide that added service for sure, because again, we're trying to make this as easy as possible for eligible property owners and businesses to apply to.
Maybe put that right at the top of the application process. So it's
Assistance
clear,
available.
Again, do not want to restrict people from being scared off for any reason.
What about if we did a minimum of 1 quote?
Or more.
And then that would, kind of reduce that requirement. I think I'd certainly be comfortable with that. I don't know about you, Matthew.
Say a minimum of 1 quote, preferably 2.
Preferably.
Yeah, or more. Like,
Yeah.
it's only in their best interest to get 2 or more, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I have certainly seen quotes before that we'll look at and we'll come back to I say, okay, you
this doesn't make sense.
consider shopping around just a little bit more because you want to get the most for your money too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to James's point too, it's matching funds. So you're going to want to make sure that you're getting.
It's our dollars
Yeah.
to invest in
Yeah.
that, right? And we certainly will question it if a quote seems to be coming from someone who isn't necessarily a reputable business or, just based on our experience, we can tell pretty quickly if there's a cost that is really out there in comparison to what's been expensed by others in the past. So that is the one good thing is that we're now have 4 years under our belt with this program. So those things are easy to catch now.
Okay. Anyone else have any? No? Okay. We have 1 registered oral submission from Sandra Lawn. Sandra will have 10 minutes to speak.
Excuse me.
Do I start right now?
Yes, sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you've all received a copy of my written submission. I didn't realize until Thursday that I saw it Thursday night that this meeting, have you started your timing? Yes, he has. Okay, I will say nothing else. I've read through all of this very, very carefully. And very pleased to see all of the program with respect to the funding for property owners. So that's not going to be my focus. My focus is going to be on the rest of the report. I think that there are some very serious things that could and should be changed because times have changed. And when this was all done back 3-4 years ago, times were very, very different. So I wanted to speak, first of all, because I've got several friends who want me to speak on this matter, and that is the whole matter of a strategic plan. You're a planning advisory committee, so you're going to get a chance to make some advice, provide some advice. And what I have been spoken about many, many times is the traffic in the downtown, the way the lights are, the way the all of those things are set in place. And also a lot of focus in your community improvement plan about the fact of the standards of heritage and all of those things. And believe me, right now, I don't know if it's too bad there aren't more people here that if all the ones that have complained about that system came in here, you'd have quite a crowd. I really thought that all of the discussion around the CIP program and the heritage in the downtown was excellent. And but I do believe that this committee should give some strong consideration to advise council to take another look at other aspects of this report, particularly not the design guidelines, and because we've had those design guidelines for a long time and they have worked very, very well. One of the things that I'd like to draw to your attention is the focus on a plan with respect to economic development. There is no plan with respect to tourism. And what is apparently quite confusing and mixed up, that we're going to also have, if this plan is implemented by council, we're going to have another group called the River Walk District group that are asking for to have a place downtown, offices downtown. That's all written into the strategic plan. I think that there's a lot of confusion in the beginning of that plan where the BIA is. And one of the things that I think is you need to take a really close look at is the way that you've mapped it out, because you talk about the River Walk District. And then from a point of view of tourism and promotion and development, for a lot of people, Riverwalk is the area in front of Fort Wellington where we have the Heritage Trail. And that is, that's not even in the Riverwalk district, but it's being called for in your community improvement plan very, very strongly. You're also looking with respect to tourism, and you've not yet developed a tourism strategy, but I noticed that Dana did participate in the county study that was done, and I know you'll be distressed to know that in that study they determined that Prescott, and I think it was Athens, are at the very lowest level when it comes to tourism development and procedure. The community safety and well-being plan was found, that is also in your program. I couldn't find it at all, so I looked online, and there is one for the county, et cetera, because that's the pillar that's really, really missing from your strategic plan. That is the community health safety. I know I came for a meeting with respect to the the strategic plan, and I wanted to speak about the health center and mental health and all those other good things, but I was not allowed to speak. So I'd like to speak now and say, in your program, you've got to pay attention. There's a lot of confusion in all of this, and I think quite easily you can take a look at this report. If you agree with every part of it, great. But I think my recommendation would be that you separate out the things that go, that need some extra amount of work. One of the things in your economic development strategy is to work only with Augusta. And I thought it would be helpful for you if I just made a very strong suggestion. You don't have that as your policy, which is what it now is. That's your policy. When you're working in economic development, you're going to work with Augusta, not with Edwardsburg. And so I just brought for your education, some of you might be interested in seeing some of the kind of work that is being done in Edwardsburg Cardinal. Always the three municipalities work together on community economic development and planning. I also sent you several pictures of things. I don't know whether you've, oh, there she goes. And the Riverwalk District, BIA, and there's a lot of confusion, okay? And the Riverwalk District is calling to have its own office in the downtown. How is this all going to fit together with the normal planning? And I think that this, maybe another picture will show you, well, that's a really positive picture. I thought I'd better put a positive picture in the Riverwalk District. But remember, when you look at that map, the Riverwalk District doesn't include the shoreline, doesn't include the area in front of Fort Wellington. There's a lot of stuff information in here, and there will be a shot of the lighthouse. And one of the things that people have commented to me about is that we're going to have all these pop-up shops downtown, and one of them is going to be in the lighthouse. And at one time, I think the town was going to do some kind of work. And also, you're going to ask the Coast Guard to help with the beautification of downtown. Some of you may know I was chosen by the Coast Guard to go on the Canada C3 expedition because they consider me to be an expert in the upper St. Lawrence River. And that is something that needs to be, you need to be aware that application, and it's not quite correct in your document. It has not been approved, but it's said the way it's described in there, it's all fine and dandy and it's all put together. And design guidelines, I think they're absolutely terrific. And private property, is it in the BIA, the Riverwalk District? I think in your community economic development plan, you should take into account and build in something that's really clear. Who's the BIA? Who's going to be this new Riverwalk District group that's going to have their own office in the downtown? And then I'm providing you with a fair number of photos as well, so that you can see when we talk about a heritage district. Oh, there's the design guidelines were obviously not followed, even though we have them in place when it comes to the facade of many of these buildings. See them up there on top of the Mary Kay shop, redoing their facades and their cornices. And Madam Burton will remember when we made an attempt to get the town to develop a program that had something to do with facades. It went through the committee of the whole, but then it came before the last council and they defeated it, and so it was never done. So these are things that are really, really important, and I know that they fit beautifully with your overall plan. Also in your overall plan on economic development, you're speaking to the recommendation is that Prescott pursue electrical companies. And this is really, really interesting, and I hope you've read that report and understood it. It's quite, it's fairly similar to the Atlas of Economic Complexity. That is an extremely important way of saying, okay, what your proposed report is telling you now is that your ambition should be to go after electrical companies. Well, there's one heck of a lot of different companies. I work a lot in the bioeconomy and work with Queen's University and the chemical engineers and so on. There are a multitude of other places that we should be pursuing in combination with Edwardsburg Cardinal and Augusta Township.
Thank you very much. That's your 10 minutes.
I'm sorry?
That's 10 minutes.
10 minutes is up? Good. Well, I hope you will read all of this and realize that I'm very, very serious about this because this community means a great deal to me and it has huge potential. But the plan that's described in your document that it's being proposed you accept today isn't going to do it.
Would staff like to speak to the oral submission?
Sure. Thank you very much. I'm going to speak to the written and the oral. So a community improvement plan is a tool that allows the municipality to direct funds and implement policy initiatives towards specific defined project areas. It does not dictate land use, as that is under the authority of the official plan, which was reviewed and adopted in 2022 and awaiting ministry approval, and the zoning bylaw, which will undergo a comprehensive review once the official plan has been approved by the province. The policy initiatives supported by the strategic plan, the economic development strategy that was created, and the new official plan support the focus on reinvigorating the downtown area, increasing employment opportunities, preserving our heritage, increasing the residential housing stock, including affordable housing, and repurposing the brownfield lands for productive use. There was some other comments made in regards to the Riverwalk District office. Nowhere in the plan in front of you this evening contemplates a Riverwalk District office group or committee or otherwise. And so that's just not in the plan. The strategic plan, while developed in 2020 and 2021, it was also supported by the economic development plan that we created singly for the town of Prescott, and it encourages working with both Augusta, Edwardsburg Cardinal, as well as our other neighboring municipalities. More recently, our official plan was adopted in 2022, and again, it's awaiting approval by the province. In terms of enabling legislation, there was some comments on the written document that suggested that the validity of the current BIA bylaw is called into question. At no point have we received any questions about that bylaw. And the downtown has had millions of invested in it over the past 5 years. And the community improvement plan has been a strategic tool in allowing that to be supported by the town, as well as the amendments that you see before you this evening support and builds on that success. In terms of the community safety and well-being plan, that's was a document that was created and worked with the United Counties, the other municipalities of the United Counties, Leeds and Grenville. The community improvement plan focused on providing incentives to private property owners and to invest in their property, not in community safety and well-being. That's a completely separate plan, and what you have before you is the community improvement plan. The community improvement plan doesn't enable support of tourism. Again, that's a separate plan, it's a separate initiative covered by our strategic plan, our economic development plan, as well as our official plan. And then finally, there was comments on the pedestrian crossovers on King Street and King and George. They were based on recommendations by traffic engineers and evaluated each intersection to develop the possible treatment. The intersections in traffic are not related to the community improvement plan. While the changes may have been seen by some as being unpopular, they are based on Ministry of Transportation guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Mrs. Long, for your
And I would just like to point out that I'm strongly in favor of all aspects except for those elements. And I think you need to take another look at the rest of the document, not just the CIP.
Thank you for your submission. So Lindsay, if we do a little bit of the changing, change the motion the way it reads, or?
Through you, Chair, I believe we could just take that as staff direction, that those changes you're talking about the changes to the language for the quotes. And yeah, I think if Matthew and Dana feel comfortable, we could leave the recommendation as is. And then just due to the conversation we had. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a recommendation that reads that the Planning Advisory Committee approve the proposed community improvement plan amendments as presented in accordance with Section 28 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 as amended. Can I get a mover? And a seconder, Jason, and a seconder? All in favor? Motion carried. That concludes the public meeting portion of our meeting, and we'll now move on to agenda items. Item 5.2 is a staff report 03-2023 regarding a signed bylaw variance application for 178 King Street East. I have a recommendation that the Planning Advisory Committee receive staff report 03-2023 regarding file number SBV 2022-02 and deny the signed bylaw variance application. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the motion for discussion purposes? And a seconder? Can I have a seconder for?
Sorry.
That's okay, Jason. And Manager of Building and Bylaw, Sean Merriman, will speak to the report.
Hi, I just want to make sure that you can hear me, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes, this is one of the few times that staff has brought forward a report requesting that support of a variance underneath the signed bylaw 2019-16 not be given. And the reason is for a lot of the following things. In this case, the applicant failed to submit a permit prior to the work being completed. And she is, or this person is the property owner with several properties in the downtown, including some that are commercial. Even when they were informed that it would not meet the downtown design criteria, it took them almost 9 months to submit a request for the minor variance. So we are asking that because it does not meet the downtown design criteria that it be denied and that the signs be removed within 30 days. And that prior to any new signs being installed, that the design be submitted and approved or at least confirmed with compliance with the downtown sign design criteria. So as you know, bylaw 2019-16 has a section in 3.6 in which where if the CBO, i.e. me, determines that it doesn't meet the guidelines or the requirements of the bylaw, that any applicant has the right to file an appeal and request a minor variance, in which they explain why the design guidelines didn't take into their exact situation the concern, or maybe that the type of sign they're proposing, although normally not encouraged in this case, would have very limited effects on the area or the purpose, like the area of the downtown in this case. So under section 5.0, prohibitive signs include no person shall erect, install, or post, display, maintain, or keep on premise any of the following types of signs, which is luminous. And this is within certain zones, which is residential R1 through 3, core commercial where we are this time, and waterfront mixed use. Now, bylaw has always taken the approach that any sign that was up and put up in good faith back when the bylaw did not outlaw them, that they're allowed to keep the signs, but as each sign comes up for refurbishment or replacement because the business has changed, change your ownership, whatever the case may be, that they're brought into the new guidelines. So this property, I'm sure you know it. It's known as 178 King Street East. It's Populares. It has ran as Populares for more years than we can imagine. And of course, it's just to the east of Edward Street on King Street on the north side. In February of 2022, a lawyer reached out requesting a compliance letter for the new owners to take it over, in which case we provided that compliance letter and let them know that they had to pay attention to the bylaws that happen in the town, even though it's currently good. In early April 2023, it was brought to the attention to town staff that new signs had been installed without a permit. An email to the owner requesting a sign permit was sent, and it was received by the town on April 8th. It was quickly apparent that the signs were not issued in the signs were not in compliance with the requirements of the downtown, and an order to comply was issued on April 11th, with the date requested that they have compliance by April 23rd. The owner was not satisfied with the decision of staff and requested information on how to proceed, and they were informed on the opportunity to request a minor variance, but they were advised even at that time that staff would not be supportive. In fairness, the owner has always been reachable and communicative, if not very expedient, in submitting a minor variance application. On December 9th, an application was received of 2022, but it was not sworn until December 12th, and then we received payment on December 13th. As you know, the subject property in the official plan is downtown core, and this designation allows for the various different types of uses and residential uses that we have down there. So what relief is sought? Basically what happened is she bought new luminescent signs and put them on the front of the unit that were totally different shape, and also put it on the side wall. It was clearly in violation. She did not reach out to staff or economic development to see how to go about doing this. And like I said, no presentations or nothing has come forward from the owner or their agents at this point to have staff reconsider the request. So then the question is, could it be desirable? Well, we did an awful lot of work on the sign bylaw, staff did, and with economic and with the downtown core and with the people from the BIA and all the people of Prescott. And we really, the design guidelines were created to create I want to call it a vibe or a culture in the downtown. When I think of all the people that have replaced their signs, including H&R Block, Bank of Montreal, numerous existing businesses and new businesses who all followed the guidelines and got permission for the signs. In this case, there's just no reason to deny or to grant this relief in this situation. So because it's totally against the sign bylaw, staff is of the belief it doesn't maintain the general intent. And like I say, in summary, as those that were on council before and those that are new may be aware, the sign bylaw was a long time coming. It took an awful lot of work to get to the point where we found we had a proper balance, a balance that considered the rights of the private property owner along with the rights of the other property owners in the area, and an opportunity to refurbish and regenerate and rejuvenate the downtown. And our concern as staff is that if we were to allow this, that it could actually work as a deterrent to all the others that have followed the rules, and they might say, why did I bother when there was no follow-up on it? I have provided a couple photos that show the previous signs and the new signs. I am under the impression that there was someone going to be at the meeting tonight, either Jackie or her agent, Kevin. And this, I did take it up with staff, and I do have the support of the Economic Development Officer, Dana, and the CAO, Matthew, in relation to this report. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Is there any discussion?
I got some questions.
Okay.
Do I direct them through you to somebody or do I just ask? Sorry, Ann.
Yeah, no, you can direct them through me.
Okay. Question for you, Sean, directed through Tracy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
I guess I'm very, very stuck in the middle on this one. I very, very seldom go to that part of town, but in the event of this, I actually walked down there several nights to view the sign. I find the sign pleasant to look at, and I realize they didn't follow the rules, so I understand that. But I put myself in a business owner's perspective and also as a consumer, is that under the current sign bylaws, I would find it difficult as a business owner using that template to compete with all of the lighting from the gas station. It's, as far as I'm concerned, if you picture yourself driving up King Street, you get to Edward Street, you're looking for a place to eat. And under the current guidelines, plywood sign, raised letters, some lights, to me, it's going to get lost in the gas station lights and signs. It's not. So I look at it, I see both sides, I see all sides of this one. So that's what I would have to say about that one. And I'm just wondering, as far as the way I've read the bylaws for signs, it almost seems like I'm wondering, is there a workaround that everyone can be happy in that all the money spent on these signs isn't wasted? Is that the illumination is cut and then working within the community improvement plan, some overhead lights are placed illuminating these signs from above like the other businesses downtown? Like, I'm just wondering, is there some kind of common ground here that can be found?
Through you, Madam Chair. In all honesty, it's not a case that it's displeasing to the eye when it's brand new. It's not a case of I just want to make an example of them or anything else like that. What I will say is take a look at the subway signs. There's a sign that brand new, meets all the design guidelines and as bright as anything that's out there. As for the sign itself, is it totally wasted? I can't say that. That's up to the owner to decide to come back with a design guideline that meets. So they could cut it off. They could put some sort of thing over top of it that makes sure the luminescence is no longer usable, then put some sort of, raised lettering on it with a halo lighting behind it, kind of like H&R Block has done. Mm-hmm. And like I say, it's not a case that it's not necessarily a nice sign to look at today, but luminescent signs were requested not to be in the downtown core for a lot of reasons, including the fact that whenever you put up that sign, you're looking at something that's going to be there for 20 or 30 years. Yeah. And box signs over 20 or 30 years don't age as well as some of the other signs that are out there and are now the rule than the exception. And I bet you, I would suspect close to half the signs in the downtown now have switched over, and we will keep switching them over as people keep bringing them in. And that was the whole purpose of the bylaw, not to force anyone to do it immediately, but when there was a chance like this where a new owner took it over, to do it properly, to meet the downtown design guidelines that everyone was looking for.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
No, Leanne?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm on the same line as Jason, seeing how we can work with Populares to see if they can comply with the sign bylaw. I mean, we created the sign bylaw for a reason. People just can't come in and put up whatever they want, when they want. There's rules to follow in anything, in school, in municipalities, and in your job, right? There's rules and regulations that need to be followed. It's very unfortunate that this owner just went and popped up these signs without following the sign bylaw. But they were aware of the sign bylaw, but yet didn't abide by them, which is very unfortunate.
We weren't, we didn't know that there was a sign bylaw, sorry.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, we did not know.
okay,
We had no idea
okay, okay,
until this happened.
I see.
And we will go all extremes to, if we have to put canopy lighting over, fine. But we did not know that there was even a bylaw for a sign. We took the old ones that were there for 45 years, took it down. They were all light bulbs in behind, like there was like 30 light bulbs, like if anything was gonna burn, it was gonna be that one. And she put up two. She decided to order another one to put on the side because you can't really see. You know, when you even drive by, you can't see. And so she just put it up. We're very sorry that it caused us confusing, but it happened because we didn't know that you just can't throw up a sign. That's it.
I appreciate you saying that.
But we can change whatever you want us to do. There's not an issue at all.
What's your name, sir?
Kevin, that guy.
Kevin Metcalf.
Yeah.
And I think that Sean had mentioned that you would be,
Yeah.
you may be present tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any, Leanne?
Right, if I can follow up. So I guess what the procedure moving forward would be them to do what, Sean?
Well, to submit a new design that would meet the downtown design guidelines. Like I said, if they can, I'm not sure who they used for a sign company. I'm under the impression they were out of Toronto or something. Maybe they can talk to them to see if they can utilize it somehow. But like I say, until I don't tell people what signs to put up. My job's just to look at the design and determine if it meets the guidelines. And in this case, it did not. So, and nothing has been submitted to me, even as of tonight, that would say this can be changed to make it meet it. So Dana and me have talked. We're not against the two signs. One will be a fascia sign, one will be a wall sign, but there has to be, like I say, it has to blend with the rest of the downtown.
Thank you. So you're looking for communication from the owner?
Communication and a resubmission at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anything to add? I was just going to say too that, or ask, sorry, when a new business comes to town, and are they given like a whole package of, you know, here's the bylaws that may pertain to you, you know, if you have any questions, let us know. Do they get like a package like that when they come?
They do, yeah. Between Sean and myself, we are, you know, because we certainly run into these scenarios. It's understandable to a certain extent, but that's where, you know, we try to get ahead of it in everything that we do. Sean usually gets a contact generally from the agent of the owner or the owner themselves and starts that communication at that point. We're communicating with a new owner of a property downtown right now through their agent. And that communication, that about the requirements for the sign bylaw, the design guidelines, building permit requirements are all being communicated at the outset, at every opportunity that we have. There are those cases where all of a sudden you will finish work one day and go into work the next morning, and next thing you know, there's a new business that has taken occupancy and they've got to sign up. And at that point, now we're trying to get ahead of it and address the situation. And sometimes that sign may not comply with the bylaw, and I am quite sure, just based on communication that I've had with Sean, that there were options communicated to the owner. These things that we're discussing tonight, you know, decommission the backlight, put some decorative lighting on, maybe some halo lighting. Certainly all these things have been discussed. I can't speak to the response, but I think it's been a lack of general responsiveness that we're dealing with and has brought us to this point.
Well, that's great. Like, as long as the communication's there from the beginning, that, you know, that they know what they should be thinking about and stuff. That's great.
If I can also, sorry, I forgot to add to that, something else that we're instituting this year is a business registration requirement. It's something that we've always encouraged businesses to do because it gets them on the directory and then we can inform them about these type of incentives. But that is also going to be a more restrictive requirement that is going to be implemented through building and economic development as well. Again, in another effort to try and get ahead of these instances ever happening in the first place.
Yeah, that sounds good. Matthew?
So if the committee would like to defer this particular decision this evening, it provides an opportunity for staff to communicate with the applicant, see if we can come to a happy medium where it becomes in compliance, and then we can move forward if that's the will of the committee.
Good with that.
Good with that, Dan?
Absolutely.
Stuff like,
Yep.
as long as there's good, clear communication moving forward and more of it, I guess.
And
Yeah, and I think that's with everything, communication. I think that every day, communication, so.
Yeah. Well, as a business owner, you work sometimes 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
The least thing you want to do is worry about these other little things, which we understand. But if you decide to become a business owner, you got to take on that responsibility, right? So all part of it.
Yeah, for sure. So we're good with that?
Yes.
Do we need to?
Through you, Chair. So if I could get a motion to defer the main motion, as long as that's okay with my original mover and seconder. I had Leanne Burton and Jason Copeland as the mover and seconder.
Okay, all in favor?
Yeah. Good.
Motion passed. Does anyone have any new business to bring forward? Good. I don't think there's any media present. Okay, there are no questions from media. Item 9 is adjournment. I have a recommendation that the Planning Advisory Committee meeting be adjourned. The time is 6:56. Do I have a mover? Jason, a seconder? Again, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
so we will be back to you probably later this week to set up another meeting. We received the final peer review for the hotel site. And so we bring it forward to this committee to receive feedback. And we hope to do that in the next few weeks. So just wanted to make you aware of that this evening. And we will try and schedule one for a few weeks from now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.